up? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I'm Morrow, your storyteller for today, and with me I have some more RPG horror stories. My voice is still warming up and I may sound nasally, and I apologize for that. It is 6 in the morning and I just woke up after having a horrible couple of days of sleep, so I want to record videos. And we're gonna start off with our first RPG horror story for today. DM treats cheater like a main character. This is an abridged version of a 7,000 plus word monstrosity spanning 4 campaigns, Have Fun, and TW for misogyny and human trafficking / slavery. Most of us were new to 5e, and I signed up for a paid online D&D group during the start of COVID. There were 2 campaigns running simultaneously DM'd by Enabler and his wife, who is really sweet and not the problem. Darren started a free fan delver game, then eventually a manipulator, who was with the director of the group, started a campaign as well. Most of the cast played in all 4 games, but I couldn't join Darren's because of scheduling. Most of the drama happened in the campaign ran by Enabler, which I'll call the A-Man. They already thrown up a lot of names for us before giving us the cast, but at least we have some cast going on right now. The cast: Luno, a human Twilight cleric, cool dude. Corgi didn't play with the A-Man, but played a dwarf battlesmith in a campaign parallel to ours, wife to Luno IRL, cool lady. Darren, half-elf grave cleric, also cool dude. Me, played Goliath Tempest cleric. Dick, a perpetually drunk arrogant asswipe, played a warforged artificer. Enabler, DM for the A-Man. Manipulator, the main director and owner of the paid group. Things started out nice in Enabler's campaign. Luno, Darren and I became fast friends and loved role-playing with each other, but pretty soon the difficulty of combat started getting very difficult, and Enabler was forcing us to fight in encounters that would have been bound to a party more than triple our level. As in, we as a level 2 party managed to take on an orc warchief, 2 ogres, an Eye of Grumsh, and 5 or so orcs, all in a cramped basement. The only way we were able to not die was by the 3 clerics spamming healing word on each other like whack-a-mole. This campaign and the group as a whole was marketed as a D&D for beginners, and we were all new to the game. At the time, I didn't realize how absurd the encounters were. I just thought it was my fault for being bad at the game. I don't know why, but Enabler really wanted to kill all of our characters, except for Dick's. Let me just get this out of the way first. Dick was a dick. Shocker. He would come to sessions sloshed and continue drinking all game. He tried to get 2 different parties TPK'd for no reason. He'd spout a bunch of racist and homophobic quote-unquote jokes that were very clearly not jokes. Oh, and he cheated. Like, a lot. None of us liked him, but Enabler treated him like a golden child. None of us know why. He was showered with magical items and thousands of more gold than any of the rest of us. He was allowed to use busted homebrew none of the rest of us were. And most infuriatingly, he was allowed to cheat, more or less in the open. He'd fudge dice, even in D&D Beyond when his rolls were recorded. His Warforged had higher health and stats than anyone, was allowed to use both a shield and a 2-handed rifle simultaneously, had more infusions than was allowed, and mixed up the loading and reloading properties between Eberron's guns and Critical Role's bad news. So he was allowed to do about 30 damage per turn, while the rest of us were going about 5. Again, since all of us were new, we didn't realize the blatant cheating till months later, and thought we just had to get good. How? At which point do you not realize that there's cheating going on? I mean, the guy is treated as the golden goose by the DM Enabler. An Enabler probably enables the cheater to continue to cheat. Not only are they allowed to hold a shield and a 2-handed rifle together, really 2-handed weapon just in general, that shouldn't be allowed, but also allowed to have better stats, be able to do way more damage, allowed to basically fudge the rolls even though recorded in the public. Somebody should be able to call this out at this time. I just don't know, unless you guys were just way too polite for your own good. Somebody should have called this nonsense out. It's not like until the end of the campaign you realize that he was cheating. Must have been blatant and visible at that point. If not that, why would you play with somebody that just gets sloshed to the game at this point if it's just really annoying and bothersome? don't play with a person like that, or at least tell the DM, hey, if you're not gonna kick this guy out, I am out. I'm done paying for this paid game. This is a paid game, by the way. I understand people have their own thoughts about like paid games and stuff, but I feel like if you're providing a paid game as a service, you should get a service of a higher quality and higher standards of a game, such as that no disruption at the table, including drunk slosh asshole that cheats at the table. That's low quality game for you. Weirdly enough, Enabler never seemed to target Dick with his monsters. Couldn't afford to risk scratching his favorite player's gold-plated ass, certainly not, but for whatever reason my character especially drew the Enabler's ire. My cleric had chainmail and a shield, so she was pretty tanky, and I guess he didn't like that? During the basement orc fight, he complained that he couldn't put her down. I thought he was joking at the time, but looking back, yeah, he wasn't. Eventually, I got tired of spending 3 to 4 hours unconscious, so I took a level in Fighter to gain the defense staff for +1 AC. I was not hit by a single attack for the rest of the campaign. Everywhere the party went, regardless of the setting or context, every time we rolled initiative, a massive enemy clerics would spawn in and pelt me with 4 to 6 sacred flames and down my character within the first round or so, every single time. In a wizard's tower, clerics. Robbing a vault, clerics are sitting in a vault. Keep in mind that Dick's AC had been about 25 through all this because shenanigans. Oh yeah, because chainmail armor and a shield and the defensive style is really gonna hamper the game. Well, it's what, like 19 AC? But 25 AC is perfectly fine according to the DM. Seriously, like at some point y'all should have called this out. Having a player with 25 AC at whatever level, like there have to be some sort of magic item stacking to the 10th freaking degree in order for that to be allowed. Also, having clerics everywhere for all why is he so threatened over a cleric? Clerics can be pretty powerful if you build them right, but like that's the fun of playing as a cleric, the ability to build your cleric whichever way you want. Cleric is just a really good baseline for making any type of character you want. It's super freaking cool. Obviously not a wizard style, but I mean you can still cast some crazy cool spells. But the blatant cheating by the Golden Boy, I don't know why DM is just allowing Golden Boy to get away, unless the Golden Boy is just paying way more money for whatever reason for this paid game. That's the only explanation I have. Probably spending a truckload more money than everybody else is, and allowed to basically get a pay-to-win reward for this. Turns out Enabler was an a-hole and a misogynist in his own right. He completely disregarded all female players in either his or his wife's campaign. They were basically the same campaign with the same plot and setting. Rarely responded to questions about the rules from me, and never bothered to send Corgi, who was playing a dwarf, his homebrewed dwarf lore, even though the whole setting revolved around dwarves. Corgi found out about the dwarf lore through Luno. He asked me to write the war building for the Goliaths, which I was happy to do. I researched the poetic and prose Eddas to make a culture based off the Jotun, sent it to him, and he approved it. It wasn't until months later that I learned he scrapped the whole thing. Also, he rewrote my character's backstory and never even bothered to tell me until, again, months later, in the middle of a session. I was the only girl in the Amen. Shocker. If somebody is being clearly antagonistic toward this, especially as a DM, you know what you do it? Drop the damn DM. It's just not worth it whatsoever. Or maybe if you really want to try to resolve it, have a conversation out of game and figure out what the hell is their business, what the hell is their case, why they're treating you differently compared to other players, or why they're not responding to you. Because clearly there's miscommunication going on, and I feel like it needs to be resolved. But if this guy's gonna be an a-hole about it, I am honestly shocked you decide to stay for this long to deal with all of it. The other players must have been like a complete joy. You might have had a reason to stick around, because good lord, why would you stick with somebody like that? There were only 2 friendly female NPCs the entire campaign, one of which was unconscious basically the whole time we knew her. But all those clerics were moving down, all loath cultists. Same goes for literally any other enemy spellcaster throughout the campaign, except for any intelligence casters. There were men, of course. But yeah, he also made a human trafficking ring, just for my character. Basically, he wanted the party to sell my character into slavery in order to progress the plot. Fun. Thankfully, they didn't do that. Absolute chads. This wasn't any other version of the campaign, of course. Well, at least the rest of the party is good, and I'm assuming the reason you stuck around is because the rest of the party was actually enjoyable to play with. Maybe the DM's wife was enjoyable with, but like it's just not gonna be worth it. You have to deal with the DM being an a-hole to you every single time. Honestly, like I said, you should have just left early on. Things finally ended when Dick tried to TPK the party again, and Enabler took the opportunity to try and kill the party once and for all. He triggered all encounters in the entire dungeon at once while the party was stuck in a pair of long hallways. My character was down within the first round as usual from 6 sacred flames, got most of the party low with about 4 groups of 3 to 6 enemies each. They had a pair of bosses cast Cloud Kill and Insect Plague in the same area at the same time, then summoned a Barlgura. Despite Dick's protest, the rest of the party drugged my unconscious character out of the spell blender, turned around, and left the dungeon. As they should! Oh my god, this is a party of Chads, except Dick. Dick is a dick. But this is a party of Chads, looking out for each other and just leaving when it's not worth being in there. Oh my god, yeah, this party is godly. A few days after the session, we got together and I posted a message on the group's Discord detailing Dick's cheating, and that I didn't want to play with him anymore. I didn't even mention my personal gripes with Enabler. Immediately, I get a message from Manipulator asking me to jump into a voice call with him and Enabler. Alarm bells start ringing in the back of my head, and I ask if the other players can join as well. Enabler disappeared and wouldn't talk unless I was alone. Of course, a few days later, when we did all get together to talk over voice chat, I was the problem player. Ah, I see. They're going with the tried-true method. Gaslighting. Manipulator scolded me for not being communicative with Enabler. Luno immediately yelled, "Bull crap!" Reminder, Enabler ignored all of my messages and wouldn't talk with women in the group. Luno, Corgi, and Darren all stood up for me. Again, absolute chance. And Luno is a pretty quiet guy, and that was the only one time I ever heard him yell. There was a lot more going on with Manipulator. He sold us fake stickers, tried to get Corgi and Luna to work with him for free, and was a nightmare DM all of his own. But that's a story for another time. We all jumped ship after that, and I heard things got pretty nasty in the VC after I left. Apparently we were the first of several mass exoduses out of the group. Now we have our own free group and play often. Since then, Corgi and Luna more or less adopted me as part of their family. We spent holidays together, they attended my college graduation, the whole 9 yards. A lot of the sweetest people you could meet. Happy ending. And I am so happy for your happy ending. And yeah, that's actually a really good point. Listen, if things suck, just leave. Have a mass exodus, start your own server, put together your own stuff, and just play the game without the a-holes. That's the best thing to do. The best thing to do. And I'm not surprised that other people started leaving the server as well. If the Manipulator and Enabler decide to run the server this way, of course I wouldn't be surprised that that's why people started to leave. Because good lord, I just imagine games with them would be freaking infuriating. But I'm glad the story ended well, and I hope you're still playing and enjoying yourselves, because at the end of the day, it's much easier to just leave a crap situation and put something together of your own. I mean, you already have a lot of people that you're playing with, and you made a lot of bonds and friendships and even got really close to people. That's some wholesome ass stuff right there, which I appreciate. Moral of the story, I would say, is don't stick around in a bad place. If something seems crappy, it's best to leave and form your own thing with a bunch of good, trusted people. Problem player ditches session 0 and freaked out when told the character didn't work in the setting. This is going to be ranty because this player had been driving me insane for 3 years. I run a yearly summer campaign for about 8 of my friends every year, and in general, it's wonderful. But I have one player who just drives me completely up the wall. Long and short of it is a lot what you already read in the sub. He's constantly late to sessions, he butts in and interrupts during the other PC character moments, he simultaneously has no idea how the game works yet constantly disputes my rulings. We had an issue last year wherein I found out in the final arc of our campaign that he hadn't been counting his spell slots, had been casting up to 30 spells per long rest as a warlock. Oh no. Hi, non-VR Morrow here. Just to kind of add a little bit to this, warlocks don't need long rest to recover those spell slots, they need short rest, which on average I believe the rules as written takes about an hour of just resting. But considering some of the other party members may benefit from short rest as well, it's actually kind of a good thing to encourage your party to short rest. And according to some online posts that I've read over the years, it seems like short rests aren't as popular or as frequent. I try to make sure in my games that they are frequent so that it allows players that do benefit from short rest to actually properly short rest. And for players that are a little bit low in health midway through a dungeon or something, without spending any of those spells or resources such as potions and stuff. And as long as a party short rests in the situation, I guess technically a warlock can spend up to 30 spell slots, unless warlock is quote-unquote short resting without any of the party knowing that they're quote-unquote short resting, i.e. basically cheating and just adding those spell slots because like, well, I'll just short rest myself and there we go, recovered all my stuff. Short resting is a party interaction, not an individual interaction. Unless the party just running off and you're just short resting behind the scenes or something, I don't know. So if you're casting more than once, unless you have a specific feature that lets you cast more than once with like those Warlock Eldritch invocations, I think the party would have noticed by now that, yeah, our Warlock is casting a little bit too many fireballs out there. What's that about? He often does stuff like that accidentally, which gives him an extremely unfair advantage over my players. Needless to say, I've never been a fan of his main character syndrome playstyle, in which he insists on always being the coolest person at the table and the bestest of other players, but it was generally manageable. Don't let people use ignorance to excuse a little oopsie whoopsie poopsie. If they're breaking the rules, they're breaking the rules, and you need to talk to them accordingly and handle the situation, wrangle the situation. After what happened this week, I'm trying to figure out how to ask him to leave the table without causing issues in a friend group. I'm going to continue reading, but some of the best ways to do it is just a direct way, just saying, I'm sorry, you're out, I cannot do this. I mean, asking directly 100% would be the best way to do it, but I'm gonna keep reading because I want to know what exactly happened. My table always does a session 0 in which we make characters together, talk about the setting, and do a bit of interweaving of backstories. This year was particularly important because I was setting very specific with low magic and limited races, and so just handling in standard character might not fit into the world. Our problem player didn't seem to think so though, because he didn't show up. No warning, no text beforehand, just completely ditched, which is already annoying because it feels kind of disrespectful to the time I put into planning, making the setting brief and little games to play to help the players with character creation and stuff. When I texted him about it, he already knew how to make a character, demonstrably untrue, and didn't need to come. Ignoring the fact that he now doesn't know the setting we're playing in, I also use session 0 to make sure the players have a chance to say if there's anything they don't want to see in the campaign. So this player also felt that he didn't need to be there to make sure he was aware of the boundaries of his table mates. Cool. I mean, at that point, you just tell the guy, listen, if you're not gonna come to session 0, you might not just come at all. Session 0s are important, and if a player like this guy just can't understand that sort of thing even after you try to explain it to him, you can lead a horse to the water but you can't make it drink. This player sends me his character hours before our first session, and I'm wondering if he even read my text. He's giving me a sheet that is clearly from D&D Beyond. It's notable that he also did this last year, as in he made a character sheet on D&D Beyond from his phone at the table during session 0, while I was helping everyone else do pen and paper character creation. He could have asked me to help, he actually chose not to. It's not the technology I have issues with, it's the fact that he refuses to A, make his character so he understands how they function, and B, make his character collaboratively with the rest of the party. His character also had 4 18s for stats, and I'm not great with math, but I don't think point buy allows that. He picked out a race that I had asked not to be played this year for story reasons, and a class that I'd asked him not to pick because 2 other players were already in that class. Any one of those things on their own would have been fine, but all of them together just felt like he was actively ignoring everything I said. Lastly, he did not include his backstory, which was meant to have sent me several days prior. If this guy can't even put in the effort to at least listen to what you send him via text and can't even show up to session 0 to make characters together so he understands the setting, the plot, and the reason behind it, and to put the characters together and decide together as a group what they want to play with, if you can't even bother to do that, then what's the point of having him at the table? It sounds like somebody you to cut your losses with, because clearly they're not putting in any effort at all or are interested in putting in any effort in playing together, especially if it's something so setting specific like having certain lore, certain classes or races locked out, and having low magic and stuff, so the player understands what the DM's intentions are and can play along within the world. And if this guy doesn't care, then what's the point of having him here at all? The D&D Beyond thing was an unwinnable battle, so I just point out the actual mechanical issue with his character, such as the high stats, the race, and class, and the fact that he had far more weapons and armor than would be possible with starting equipment. Immediate fit. He complained that I was dampening his creativity, that I was being too controlling of his character creation,
and that D&D is a fantasy game, so you should be able to do whatever you wanted. Yes, D&D is a fantasy game, and yes, you could do a lot of things that typically other games would not allow you to do, but at the same time, you need to work with your DM to figure out what the setting is, what the rules are, what the campaign style is going to be, how the game is going to be run, because it has a specific rule set to it. Video games even have their own rules. You have to follow the rules and mechanics, although some can be exploitable, but you still have rules and mechanics you gotta follow in order to play the game well. Similar things going on with the TTRPG. When the DM is setting the campaign, the tone, the pace, the limits, the world exploration, and like what is possible in the world, but you need to work with your DM to figure out what is allowed and what is not allowed. The DM is putting in theme and effort into making sure that everybody gets to be involved in something cool together. And this guy, this complete a-hole, doesn't care. He just saying, oh, you're just limiting my creativity. Well, you would have known the limits of creativity if you talk to the DM for once and figure out what the do's and don'ts and what kind of things you can set up for this campaign, idiot. If you're not going to play with the DM's rules and settings that they've set carefully for a specific story reason, or at least listen to the DM or communicate to the DM to try to open up the creativity a little bit more, then what's the point of you being here if you're not going to contribute or participate in the slightest? I'm a super story-driven DM, and I'll bend my worlds and rules to accommodate players' ideas and creativity, but the character he gave me literally could not exist in the world we were playing in. I felt really bad about this at first, because I didn't want my setting to mean this player wasn't having fun, so I tried to offer the compromise that he could keep his stats and class if he just changed his race, which was the main issue story-wise. He absolutely refused and told me the race is integral to his backstory. The backstory that he didn't even submit, didn't even have a backstory. His backstory. I asked him to send it over so he could figure out a way to make things that would make everyone happy. And he told me that his backstory was a secret, that he was not going to send it to me. Oh my god. You need to communicate these secrets to your DM, so your DM knows what's going on and what kind of secrets you're setting up to, so your DM could work with you to help you set these secrets up for a big payoff later on. But if your DM doesn't even know these secrets, you just spring up on them, haha, I was a prince all along, and DM doesn't know that, they could just go like, no you're not, the prince is over there, you're not a prince, it's not part of your backstory. It was my secret backstory, DM. Well, if it's so secret that you couldn't even tell me about it, then how am I supposed to integrate it into the story, you asshole? I've been playing D&D for 7 years, and no one has ever said anything even remotely similar to this. It rang my alarm bells extra loud, because in the past, this player had randomly said things like, oh, I used to be part of this faction, they'll just let me in their hideout, or the prince and I actually go way back, we're childhood friends, so he wouldn't arrest me. Look at that, I called the whole prince thing, when these things have never been mentioned in his backstory or otherwise. I'm all for improv, but with him it feels like he's making things up to avoid encounters or bypass the narrative I've written. Definitely making things up on the spot in order to avoid the encounters, 100%. Like, listen, if you want to have a secret backstory that you keep from your other players because maybe you have a serious past or you worked with the BBG or the local bandit group and you don't want other players to know this until a big reveal when you choose to reveal it, then that's completely fine. Having a backstory you tell to other players while having a secret backstory you give to the DM can be perfectly possible, but your DM needs to know that it has to be a secret backstory and has to agree and check out the backstory in order to be fine with it. But this, nah, not gonna fly. DM, honestly, you should have kicked him out way earlier. I wanted to be nice about the whole thing, so I just told him that it's not really how my table works, but I'll make sure to keep his backstory extra super secret from the other players. He threw another hissy fit and said that I was being too controlling. My brother in Christ, how's the DM supposed to know what your secret is if you don't tell it to your DM? How are they supposed to get you set up for this big reveal if they can't even be in on it? I get not having other players in on it, but at least you should tell your DM about the secret of yours. Otherwise, how are they gonna know what the secret is and help set the reveal up? To my great and incredible surprise, after all of this, the player showed up late to our first session. Though the session was overall lovely, he spent the entire time moping, glaring at me, somehow both not participating and overshadowing all other players. Truly incredible. At one point, another player asked him something about his character, and he responded with something along the lines of, it was meant to be this, but DM wouldn't let me because of her setting, which I found a bit rude. I'm not sure if this situation is ground for an exodus from the table, but I'm seriously considering either that or asking the player if we can talk about how the way he's acting is making me and his table mates feel, as I know I'm not the only one annoyed with all this. Obligatory shout out to my other 7 players who rock and have never done anything wrong ever. At the end of the day, there's a possibility that the player will actually change and try to listen to what's going on, or 2 things will happen. They won't show up to the meeting, or they'll just keep saying there's DM's fault, I'm not at fault, it's all the DM and stuff. If nothing can be changed, remove them, kick him out. Say either this conversation happens and things need to change, or you're out. Gotta put your foot down with this sort of thing. You're the DM, you gotta wrangle this player in. Your time might be better off spending to find another person to be part of your group. That's not gonna be an a-hole. Your time is way more precious than dealing with one a-hole, trust me. And with that, that's gonna be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.